Oh, okay. I want. Oh yeah, this was the one that I wanted to watch on stream, but I think I got sidetracked. I think because we were trying to watch. We were trying to finish Escape the Backrooms, but I really wanted to watch this video. All right, Trey, here we go. This one's gonna be a fucking banger, bro. I know it. All right, we got Chilling Scares. This was posted 12 days ago, chat, and this was 6 most disturbing Reddit threads. All right. Oh my god, this is gonna be fire, chat. You know it's gonna be good, bro. When it's like Reddit threads or some shit like that, bro, you know it's gonna be fire.
September 29th, 2022, Reddit user Liz Gillies made a desperate post in the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit reading, I am losing my mind. I was never one to believe in the paranormal or whatever, but I have no idea what is going on with me right now, and I'm genuinely considering seeking professional help. I live in a really small shared dorm apartment with 2 roommates. There's this hallway that if you face it, there are 2 bedrooms to your right, 1 bedroom to your left, and a closet at the end of the hallway facing you.
Alright.
The bedroom on the left is right next to the closet. When we moved in, my roommate always complained that they got a closet instead of a bathroom like me and my other roommate had in our rooms. This closet has a bunch of our shared stuff, including my clothes, gifts, keepsakes, whatever. Today I got back from visiting my parents and I came back to put away some clothes from this closet, but I opened it and saw a bathroom. A bathroom with a toilet, a shower, and everything. I was only gone for 2 days and we rented.
Wait, what? So a closet. So it was a closet. Now it has become a bathroom in like 2 days. She tripping off
This
something, bro?
place, so it couldn't have been randomly built or something. I told my roommates, but they said it was always a bathroom and they had no idea what I was talking about.
Yo.
I can't find any of the stuff that was in that closet anymore, even though I had a ton of memorable keepsakes in that closet. What is going on? I spent all day just sulking in my room feeling miserable.
Yo, what?
I am not
She might be
crazy,
going
but
crazy
that
low-key.
bathroom was a closet just 3 days ago. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm genuinely considering seeing a psychologist right now. Now, as far as Glitch in the Matrix
Yo, I actually
stories
never heard
go,
of
this
one.
is exactly the kind of story the subreddit is filled with, where one person has a strange experience where it felt like reality briefly malfunctioned.
Yo, what happened?
And because they can't really prove what they saw, the people in this community find it easier to land on the explanation that feels more comfortable, that it wasn't an errant perception,
might
but
be like-
rather some kind of slip in reality itself.
Oh,
But
no.
even by those standards, this post felt strange. Because the OP wasn't trying to sell anyone on alternate realities. In fact, they opened the post by clarifying that they didn't believe in such theories and were already considering seeing a professional. And that self-awareness is exactly what made the details so unsettling.
Yeah, this is a little
Unlike
creepy,
most
bro.
posts on the
When people are, like,
subreddit, which
actually
usually
aware
revolve
and
around
shit.
much smaller incidents, like a small object disappearing for a moment before reappearing, or a
Yeah, that's pretty
split-second
big.
change in
A closet
perception,
turning into
OP
a
experienced
bathroom?
an entire part of their apartment structurally change while they were away for 2 days. But even
Oh
more
my God,
strangely,
whatever happened in
nobody
those
else
2
seemed to
days?
remember the building being any different. As far as their roommates were concerned, the closet had never existed at all. Naturally, people in the comments started trying to help the OP figure out what happened.
like brain
Some
fog
leaned
or
into the
like-
idea that if the apartment had somehow changed, then maybe the missing
something wrong
keepsakes
with the
hadn't
brain maybe a little
disappeared,
bit?
they'd just been moved somewhere else. While others suggested checking old photos of the apartment, looking for anything that could confirm whether that space was ever listed or used as a closet in the first place.
Oh my God,
However,
imagine.
because of the nature of this subreddit, it didn't take long for the thread to devolve into paranormal speculation.
Oh, here we
Users
go.
floated everything from alternate universes, timeline jumps, to quantum immortality. Some even
Oh
suggested
my
that OP
God.
might have died during their trip and that their consciousness had somehow jumped into a different timeline. At one point, the OP
What?
actually tried following some of the bizarre advice they were getting to make any sense of the situation, but sadly, none of it seemed to work. For a while, it really did start to feel like there was no explanation. Like OP
That is
had
weird. I think it
genuinely
might just be
experienced some
like
kind
it
of
might actually be
time
like
glitch.
hallucinating or something like
However,
that.
the reality behind the situation was a lot more simple and a lot more devastating. Shortly after the post went up, a user named OddCorgi30 asked the OP what kind of items had actually been stored inside the mysteriously vanished closet.
Yep, mental
But
inventory?
instead of naming
Oh,
specific
shit, alright.
keepsakes or valuables, the OP answered vaguely, almost like they didn't fully know what even was inside. I
Yo.
don't know, some clothes, old Christmas gifts, jewelry, some other stuff I can't remember. This
that's
was
not good enough,
strange,
low-key.
but it didn't prove anything on its own. Most people would struggle to list every item in their closet.
That's true, but, like, I
However,
think
in
you
this
know a bunch of
case,
stuff.
those missing items were the main proof OP had that the closet ever existed. So, if their memory of the contents was already vague, then naturally it raises questions about the larger memory attached to those contents too. It's possible OP's mind had built an entire memory around something that
I would
never
say
existed
Alzheimer's,
in
but
the
that's
first
not what it
place.
is.
Memory distortion to this scale, where someone is convinced an entire
Oh,
physical space has
memory
changed,
distortion,
can be
yeah.
an early sign of
I think that's what I'm
neurological
looking for.
deterioration, including conditions like dementia. But at the time, nobody in the
Dementia,
thread
okay.
considered that possibility. Instead, the comments just pushed the OP deeper into the idea that what they were experiencing was real. People started sharing their own glitch in the Matrix stories, reinforcing the belief
It is weird
that
because
nothing was
I
wrong
don't
with the
wait.
OP,
I don't know if
and
it's.
what
I
they
don't
were
think we can.
experiencing was, in a way, normal.
Because I don't
Some
think
even went as
parallel
far as to
universes
say
are
that seeing a
aren't
professional
technically
was not only unnecessary
think.
but harmful. Then,
least this is
roughly
what I've
2
heard.
weeks later, the
I
OP
don't know, I could
edited
probably
the
just easily
post
Google
with
search it
one
up.
short sentence. Edit, October 15. I have a brain tumor.
Holy shit, chat. Oh my. Yep. I see that would explain it for sure. Then look at that. We wire your brain or
Suddenly,
some
everything
shit.
the commenters had attributed to a glitch started looking like the symptoms of a life-threatening medical
Yo,
condition. The OP never shared what
that's
type of tumor
scary,
they
yo.
had. But brain tumors are well documented to cause memory distortion,
Okay, yeah.
hallucinations, confusion, and changes in perception.
Alright, then there you go.
And depending
That
on where the
solved it.
tumor is located, they can also interfere with spatial awareness and the brain's ability to process physical environments correctly.
scary as
which
fuck,
means that the
chat.
most likely explanation is that the OP's brain had created or altered a memory so convincingly that it completely overrode what was actually in front of them. It's possible they had once lived somewhere with a closet in a similar location, and
yeah,
their
that
brain
makes
merged that old
sense.
memory with the apartment they were currently living in. But the
That
most
actually makes
unsettling
sense,
part
you know?
is that we'll probably never know for sure, because the OP never gave another update, and their Reddit activity appears to have stopped completely after that edit. And considering
hope
the
she's doing
average
well, bro.
survival rate of some brain tumors among adults is only 14.6
Yo,
months, there's a
bro.
very real possibility that they are no longer alive. If that's true, then this thread may have documented
Nah, I
one of
hope
the
she's doing
final
well,
moments
if
of
she's
someone
still
slowly
with
losing
us,
their
you
grip
know?
on reality, while thousands of strangers online convinced them that it was the universe glitching around them.
Yo, speaking of brains, bro, have y'all seen how they do surgery on brains, bro? You know that when they do surgery on when you do brain surgery, they don't put you to sleep. Like I think you're standing still like this, and your head's fucking cut open, and it's because I don't think because you can feel anything in your brain or something like that. That's why they keep you awake. Actually, I don't know. Actually, wait, hold on. Let me Google this up before I start spitting bullshit, bro. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Look. Okay, so patients stay awake during awake brain surgery, so doctors can monitor critical brain functions in real time, such as speech, movement, and vision. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. By asking patients to perform simple tasks like talking, reading, or moving, surgeons can identify and avoid damaging essential areas of the brain while removing tumors or treating epilepsy. Oh shit! All right, but I feel like if you do enough brain surgery, don't you know which part of the brains do which function, or is it different for every brain? Oh, look at that. Answer my question myself. Like the brain's geography varies from a person to person. Ah, okay. So look at that. So I guess we all don't have the same. Well, we have the same brain functions, but they could be in different spots. Okay, that's okay. That makes sense. All right, that's such a weird concept to me though, bro. Man, like you're like you dead as your head is dead as getting cut open. Like I think your skull. I don't know if your skull is like. I mean, I think they're bashing your skull or some shit, and then just going straight to your brain, bro. That's actually trippy, bro.
8th, 2025, a Reddit post was made under the title, "Please help, random bare feet in snow showing up in front yard. It rained and snowed all day yesterday, so I decided to check out the backyard. I looked down and there are bare feet trackings around and near my car. I double checked it wasn't my slippers, but this was pure bare feet showing. We decided to set out a camera in the yard
Bare
overnight.
feet? Like
when we
bare
woke up,
feet
there
or
was
like
even
bare
more
feet?
footprints, but nothing on the camera. Throughout the morning and
Like
afternoon,
an
I was
actual
checking
animal
to see
bear,
if
or
there
like
was more.
actual
About an
human
hour
bare
ago,
feet?
there was one more, but it was hard to tell since the snow is melting and there was a bunch of footprints to begin with." Alongside this, the LP posted several pictures
Oh,
of the
shit, what
prints.
the
At
hell?
first, a lot of people in the comments treated the situation like a
Good joke.
strange but explainable incident, with some suggesting that one of the people in the house may have been sleepwalking.
But why would they go
Others told
outside?
the OP to check
Yo, you said what? Make a baby? Yo, Sunyan, bro.
for a carbon monoxide leak, stating, Check your house for carbon monoxide. One of the residents, including you, could be doing this and not remembering due to carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh, I've heard
An exposure like that can
like
cause
that.
hallucinations and memory gaps, which might
Yeah, I've heard
explain
of
why
this.
someone in the house was walking outside barefoot with no recollection of doing
Yeah.
it. But a few hours
That's
later,
kinda
the OP
scary, bro.
posted an update, and what they shared made the
It was.
situation even more bizarre. They confirmed that nobody in the house sleepwalks, and that none of them had even been barefoot outside since August,
Alright, but
so
what
the
the carbon
prints couldn't have
monoxide,
come
though?
from any of them. More importantly, after the first set of tracks appeared, they moved their Ring doorbell camera from the front of the house to the backyard, hoping it would
Okay.
catch whoever was responsible.
But nothing.
According to the OP, that didn't happen. Friday night, we moved the Ring doorbell camera that was at the front of the house to the backyard to catch the person who was walking around barefoot. The morning of Saturday, I go outside and there are even more prints now. Check the camera and there was not a person detected,
it's
and I
gotta
did
be
not
them
see
then,
anybody.
bro.
Even though the quality
If
isn't
the
great,
camera's
I
not
would definitely
it's
be
not
able to see a
catching
grown
nothing, then it's
man
gotta be
or a
them.
grown woman walking in our
It's
yard.
like carbon monoxide,
The
I
OP
think.
also posted a video clip of these prints.
Yo, what the fuck? Yeah, but how do we know that's not them, though?
And the more they described the prints, the stranger the whole situation became. These weren't normal tracks from someone walking across a yard. The spacing was unusual and inconsistent, without the steady rhythm you'd expect from a person moving through the snow. Some of
Okay.
the prints were clustered near the car, while others were facing the house, close to the windows, as if someone had been standing there looking in. But none of them
Yo.
seemed to lead anywhere in and out of the property. Now, because this was posted to a paranormal subreddit,
They
a
can't
large
take it
part of the
serious.
discussion went exactly where you'd expect. People brought up
Skinwalker.
spirits, skinwalkers, and mythical
Sanyan, bro.
creatures. The OP, though, to their credit, didn't seem fully committed to the paranormal explanation. They admitted that they only turned to r/paranormal encounters after the camera failed to capture anybody moving through the yard, which may not have been the mystery they thought it was. But the subreddit's framing steered them away from the most realistic explanation. As the top comment under the first post suggested, "Someone is scouting your house. Time to invest in
Oh,
security cameras and
shit.
lights." And another commenter who claimed to be a reformed burglar explained why the person decided to do it barefoot. "As a reformed bad guy, they're casing your place or probably a peeping Tom. I would take my shoes off when in and put them back on when out."
I would take my shoes off when in and put them back on when out.
The thing
Okay.
is, shoe soles leave identifiable treads that can be matched in an investigation.
Okay.
But bare feet or feet covered only by socks are far harder to trace back to anyone. So the
Shit,
fact that the person was
yo,
barefoot
that's not
may
scary,
not have
bro.
been
What?
random,
That's
but
lore,
an
chat. There you
intentional
go.
choice.
That's
And
some new
because the
insight
OP
you
never
never
mentioned
knew
contacting
about,
the
bro.
police, whoever was outside realized they could keep coming back without attracting much attention. But one user presented another possibility
No, because that is
was
a
a
thing,
lot
though,
more
chat.
terrifying.
I have heard of that
Google
before.
Hinterkaifeck. For those
The
unfamiliar,
hell
the
is that?
Hinterkaifeck murders are one of the most notorious unsolved cases in German history.
Oh.
In 1922, a farmer in Bavaria discovered fresh footprints in the snow leading to his farmstead, but none leading away. Days later, all 6 members of the household were found dead. Investigators later determined that the killer had been hiding inside the home, possibly for days before the attack. Even though the
Yo,
relevance of this
what?
example to OP's situation is limited, the possibility alone is enough to make the footprints feel much more dangerous. But the connections likely
I think
aren't
it's still
true.
dangerous regardless,
For starters, the Hinterkaifeck footprints led toward the home and stopped, because the killer had gone inside and never left. The OP's prints told a different story entirely. There was no trail leading in or out, and nothing inside the home had been disturbed. More importantly, the Hinterkaifeck murders happened within days of the farmers first noticing the footprints. OP's situation had been repeating over multiple nights with no escalation, so the case doesn't actually share much beyond the snow. Now, as for the camera capturing nothing, that part is far easier to explain than the OP seemed to think.
But
Looking
why?
into the Ring doorbell camera the OP was using, you find that it doesn't record continuously. It only begins recording after its motion sensor is triggered, and there's a well-documented delay between detection and the actual start of the
damn,
footage.
okay.
Numerous Ring users have reported their cameras consistently missing people approaching and only capturing them walking away, if at all. On top of
Yo,
that,
what
the
the
motion
fuck?
sensor
So
can shut down
inconsistent
for up to 30 minutes between detections. So when you factor in
Damn, that kinda
snow, cold
sucks.
weather, possible weak Wi-Fi, and a doorbell camera that had just been moved from its normal position to the backyard, it starts to make sense why the intruder was never caught on camera, which
Alright,
is
but
probably
multiple
also why the
days, though?
footprints suddenly stopped by the 3rd day. And weeks later, when it snowed again, OP confirmed that no new prints appeared. So whoever it was had been watching closely enough to notice a new camera in the yard and decided the house was no longer worth the risk. We will likely never know what exactly their intentions were.
Okay, let's say this wasn't fake, chat. Regardless of the okay, like I said, let's just say this is not fake, right? And like what he's actually posting is generally true. Regardless of this, regardless of the of what the actual outcome was or what the actual result was out of that it's carbon monoxide poisoning, and he's just not remembering because it's been reoccurring for 3 days, or it actually is some sort of intruder or somebody legit stalking outside the home, chat. Either way, both are really bad. You know what I mean? Fuck, bro, that's actually crazy. And the fact that bro, I didn't know about the Ring doorbells, bro. That's kind of ass. That's kind of ass if it like kind of skips like that, and it's not continuous recording. That shit is kind of buns. I mean, it's probably still good, but I don't know if it's like over 3 days and you can't catch it. The Ring doorbell can't catch the motion. What? How's that even possible? 3 days?
On August 2nd, 2014, Reddit user Stev Goldhound made a chilling post that immediately caught the platform's attention. Seriously creepy. A picture of a man with an axe on a decommissioned military frigate being broken up for scrap. Must read.
Wait,
the
what?
post linked to an Imgur gallery where the person told the full story and shared the image.
Wait,
As I've said in previous posts, I work at sea. Last month, we came into dry dock to carry out refit and repairs. Dry dock is when a ship is brought into a lock, the gates closed, and all the water pumped out, leaving the ship high and dry on the blocks, thus allowing repairs/inspections, etc. of the underside of the hull. Next to us was an old military frigate being broken down for scrap. She had arrived about 2 weeks prior to us. Once the frigate was on the blocks and dry, all the crew left and the old girl to her fate. A sad sight, but that's how these things go. Once all the sensitive stuff had been removed, the dock workers were free to go on. The dock foreman, John, went on board first with a camera to take pictures of work areas. He took a couple of hundred all in all. This was one of them. The image showed a narrow corridor inside the ship. But right near the edge of that flash and barely visible in the shadows, there was a figure peeking from the corner, and in his hand he appeared to be holding an axe. OP went on to explain how John had been moving through the ship. He later sent all of the pics to his boss, who upon seeing this one, called John straight away asking, "Who is the guy with the..."
No, bro, Hell no, bro. Hell no, bro.
Axe at the edge of the...
But how did you not see him? What? How did when he took pictures, like, bro, I feel like that's something you would notice instantly, unless it was like he used the flash, unless he wasn't paying attention of what of the photo. But even with the flash or no flash, I feel like you could see that, but there's light reflecting inside the room.
Camera flash. What? John had no idea. He never saw anyone. The area where this picture was taken was in a cross alleyway deep inside the ship. He was going around with a torch and a camera. When he'd go to take a picture, he would turn off the torch, snap the shot, turn the torch back on, and be on his way. This means when John took this photo, he was standing completely blind in the middle of a decommissioned warship with nothing but the split-second flash of his camera between him and whoever was in that doorway. The OP also mentioned that because the vessel was military, a police search was called immediately.
Oh my God.
A search was carried out, but no one was found. There was one way on and off the ship, and that was by a gangway covered by CCTV. You couldn't jump over the side as it was a 25-meter drop onto concrete. No one was seen to leave the ship after John had taken this. Once the post reached Reddit, users started enhancing the image, adjusting the brightness and contrast levels to pull more detail out of the shadows. The clearer version wasn't enough to identify exactly who it was, but it made it unmistakably clear that it was a human, leaving no chance of dismissing it as a random piece of machinery or an unusual shadow. What was harder to explain, though, was the face. It looked almost featureless, with no visible eyes reflecting the flash and skin that seemed gray and waxy, like it was made of plastic. But for most people in the thread, the answer was simple, but still quite unsettling. It just looks like an old hobo who was startled that someone was in his home taking pictures, so he grabbed an axe and peeked around a corner to see what was up. An axe hobo is still scary.
Yeah, for sure. What?
Now, considering the setting, this theory isn't exactly impossible. Some commenters later identified the ship as the HMS Cornwall, a former Royal Navy Type 22 frigate that was being scrapped around that time. These ships are massive, and by the time they're being dismantled, they're full of stripped rooms, dark passageways, and partially open compartments, which is exactly the kind of place a homeless person could wander into. A user who claimed to have served on a submarine backed this theory up, saying naval vessels are full of hidden gaps and tight sections large enough to crawl through or move across without being detected. So that'd be a great
area to play hide and seek.
The
And
fact
run
that
the
police
ship.
didn't find anyone after
Like an
searching the
abandoned ship.
vessel
Maybe
may
because they
simply
didn't check
mean
hard
that
enough,
whoever
yeah.
was in there either slipped out before the search started or
they
knew the
never got
ship better
caught.
than the people looking
Yeah,
for him.
that's what I'm thinking
But
too.
this theory only works if the photo itself is real. As with most internet mysteries that get this much attention,
is it not real?
some users were understandably skeptical of the photo. They pointed out that the figure could have easily been a friend in a mask, photoshopped, or even a CPR dummy propped up in the corridor. But there
don't
are
know.
still a few details that make the story hard to dismiss completely.
I don't think so.
For
Yeah, it could be
starters,
someone in a
according to the
mask,
OP, John was an old school steelworker who used a Nokia 3210 as his
Oh
personal
my
phone.
God,
Not
suck it, bro.
exactly the type of person
Yeah.
who would Photoshop images for internet
For
attention.
sure, bro.
And secondly, one user ran the photo through a forensic analysis tool and they didn't find any obvious signs of digital editing. Of course, that still doesn't rule out the simpler possibility that the scene was staged in front of the camera, which
True.
leaves only two realistic explanations. Either someone in the dockyard
That
created
shit
an
was real?
extremely
Oh, fuck
convincing
that.
hoax, or John unknowingly photographed a real person hiding
Yeah.
inside the abandoned warship. If that second theory is true, and the man with the axe was close enough to be caught by the flash, it also means he could have been close enough to reach John before he could run to safety. And in a pitch-black corridor, John would have had no idea someone was moving toward him until it was already too late.
But I feel like that, like, if that person has an axe, right? Like, when they took this photo, if this was real, right? If that person took an axe and he obviously peeked out and was like, oh shit, someone's taking a picture of me. I'm cooked. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna get caught. I'm surprised they didn't, if it was real, like, whoever that person was didn't attack John, the guy that took this photo, you know? I feel like that's the only kind of thing that it's not making sense. Because obviously they're I don't know if they got anything to lose or none, but like I said, like if like he peeked out at the right time where the guy was taking a photo of inside, so he's probably thinking maybe the guy with the axe is thinking, you know, oh shit, I got caught. And then the minute he starts turning, the minute John walks away, I'm surprised the guy didn't come out and at least attack him or something like that. So I don't know, but you know what, bro? I actually have never heard of these Reddit threads, so I think these are really cool. I'm actually like intrigued about what's next, bro, because I've never heard of these.
On April
Before-
18th,
People that
2019,
make these
Reddit user
are
Wooden
usually
Head
kinda like
made
the
a
same
post with
ones.
the title, "Someone
I
on
don't know.
Facebook thrift page found this chilling message in some old drawers." Attached were two images of a drawer that had apparently been bought from a thrift store. The first one showed a message written inside the drawer, "The truth is under." And the
Alright.
second image showed the underside of that same drawer, where another message read,
Yo,
"The
bro,
body
what is
lies
going
at,"
on, bro?
followed by a set of GPS coordinates.
Yo.
Now, the first reaction most people had was that this was some kind of joke. Just someone writing a disturbing message on an old piece of furniture to scare whoever eventually found
Oh,
it years
hell
later.
no.
In fact, multiple people in the comments admitted doing the same when they were younger. "I did that once as a kid. I wrote, 'Don't look for the body under the apple tree in the backyard. You'll find more than you bargained for.'
What coordinates,
I used
though?
to do dumb things like this as a kid, hoping people would find it
Actually,
later."
maybe.
So, under normal circumstances, a post like this probably would have been dismissed within minutes as another creepy internet hoax. But when people started plugging the coordinates into Google Maps,
Alright.
instead of leading to some random empty field or suburban backyard, the location felt way too specific to ignore. The coordinates pointed directly into the Avon Park Air Force Range, which is a massive military training ground in
Yo.
central Florida that spans more than 100,000 acres.
You couldn't get
At
there if you
first,
wanted
a
to
few
then.
Florida users talked about going there to see what was actually at the location. But those plans fell apart immediately after a user who owned property just north of the pinned spot
You
recognized the
couldn't go
area
there.
and warned everyone to stay away. "I own recreational property just north of that location. As someone else mentioned, the pinned location is inside the Avon Park Bombing Range, or MacDill AFB.
fuck.
We ride our four-wheelers down to the very southeast end of the property and watch them do bombing runs. Aside from trespassing on a military installation, you do not want to go trekking out there. Lots of unexploded ordnance." According to this
Oh,
user, the area
yeah.
was a live bombing range, surrounded by restricted land and unexploded ordnance, which are undetonated military explosives. So even if
Yo.
someone nearby wanted to check it, this wasn't a
couldn't.
place a civilian could simply walk into with a shovel, which is actually what made the whole thing so disturbing. If this was a hoax,
could be a joke,
then the
though.
location was almost too perfect and specific. And a bombing range is also an almost perfect place to actually hide a body. Nobody goes there, and the ground is already so torn up from years of explosives that fresh digging would blend right in. And any remains left near an active target zone could eventually be destroyed by ordnance, causing the evidence to erase
Yo,
itself over time.
what?
This theory was supported by another commenter who pointed out how easy it would be for someone with military access to move through the area without drawing attention. If the killer
Hell
worked
no.
there, they would have access, and it's not like the gate guards would be searching their car. There would be some camera evidence,
That's how
but
I
when
say
you've been there
cameras
for
should
some
are everywhere,
time,
bro.
you know your way around and where the blind spots are. Besides, the specific location is in a remote part that's probably rarely driven past, if at all. Even with all these possibilities floating around, nothing was more unsettling than the coordinates themselves. They weren't just rough directions to a vague area. They were
Like,
written
really
out specifically to
yeah.
6 decimal points. According to GIS standard, this narrows a location down to roughly 0.11 meters, which is
Oh,
precise
shit,
enough to
alright.
mark the exact position of a single human grave. So, while
Yo.
the hoax theory still sounds the most reasonable, it's also strange to imagine someone going that far just to scare a stranger buying old furniture. Eventually, the
Oh,
post
that
gained
is weird
enough
as
traction
fuck.
that people began contacting law enforcement.
Oh,
According to
okay.
an update shared by the OP, a friend of theirs contacted the Polk County Sheriff's Office, only to find out the homicide detective had already been alerted by someone else earlier that same day.
Oh, okay.
But a second update revealed that the situation became complicated almost immediately
Wait,
because the
what?
coordinates landed on military property. Since the location sat near the boundary between Polk County and Highlands County, there was confusion over which department actually had jurisdiction over the area.
Bro, why
However,
just
even
not
without that
go?
dispute, neither department could simply drive out there and start digging. The area was part of an active Air Force bombing range,
Yeah,
so they needed
exactly.
military authorization before anyone could safely enter the site. The OP ended the update by saying they would return with more information once investigators looked into it. But that update never came, and the last
what
activity
the
under that thread
fuck?
dates back to over 6 years ago. Searching through
Shit.
local reporting and public records from both Polk and Highlands County doesn't bring up any evidence that a search was ever officially carried out at the coordinates. And with no
Yo.
concrete evidence of any criminal activity, the more likely possibility is still that someone
be
simply
fake.
wrote the message in the drawers
probably
a
is
joke
fake,
and was
but
designed
still
well enough to
kinda
drag
crazy.
both the internet and the police into the same mystery.
Yeah, kinda
But
crazy,
until
what?
someone physically goes to the location and checks firsthand, we will never know for sure.
Nah, no one's dumb enough to do that, I feel like, bro. No way.
On July 20th, 2021,
Imagine you
Reddit
getting-
user
imagine you go over there,
posted
bro.
to the
Yes, imagine you're going there, right? You be like, fuck it, I'm gonna be the one to do it. And then you really get fucking bombed, bro, by an airplane.
investigative subreddit RBI, which read, "Police didn't investigate and it's been bothering me. At around 8:30, 8:45, I arrived home from a quick trip to town to grab a beer. As I got out of my car, I could hear something. I thought for a moment that I'd left the TV on and was hearing it from outside. But as I walked to the front of my car and pressed the lock button on my remote, I realized that what I was hearing was screaming. I listened for a second, thinking it was somebody screwing around, but then the woman's voice screamed, 'No, stop, you're hurting me, you're killing me,' and
Oh,
an
wait, I
adult
think I've
male
heard this one
voice
before.
yelling something I couldn't make out. There was
I
a
think I've heard
dog
of this
barking from the
case.
same direction,
Yeah, I think
as
I've
well
heard
as a
of this
repeated
case.
thudding noise. I immediately dialed
seen this
911 and
clip.
told the police. They could even hear the screaming in the background. They said they'd send an officer to drive by, but an hour passed and none came. I watched for them on
Yo,
my
what the
security
fuck?
cameras. The screaming was coming from directly where the camera is pointed, but more than 50 feet away across a narrow field. There is a small shack that has a couple of cars, usually parked at the road just on the other side of the field. It is bothering me a
have I?
lot, since I'm 41 years old and I've never heard anything so disturbing in real life. The OP also attached a Dropbox link containing 2 clips from his security cameras. One of them shows him standing
wait,
outside while on
why
the
do I
phone
think
with
I've heard this,
911,
though?
and in
I've
the
seen this.
background, a scream can clearly be
Hold on, chat,
heard.
lock in.
Out at Rocky Fork Lake. I'm not real sure the address. I'm at my home.
The second clip came from a backyard camera pointed toward the narrow field and the small shack beyond it. And
Alright.
although a lot of the audio is buried beneath the outdoor AC unit, it captures how the
yeah,
screaming went
yeah,
on
I
for
think I've heard
several
this.
minutes
Yeah,
without
yeah.
stopping.
Yeah, I've seen this before.
Since the OP lived in a rural area, some of the first comments suggested the sounds could have come from a wild animal, especially a fox, since foxes are known for screams that can sound disturbingly human. But the OP
I've heard that
rejected
too.
that
Yeah, I've
idea
actually heard
immediately.
that before.
Well, I've never heard a fox screaming, "Stop it, you're killing me," and the man's voice screaming would have been awfully deep for a fox. Some users tried finding less disturbing explanations, with one user suggesting the screams could have come from a TV playing a horror movie. It is creepy.
yeah.
It could possibly be from a movie, or I don't know, any chance something could be being filmed in the area, so like this was acting. Another person even named the specific film they thought was playing. But when you factor in the dog barking and the repeated thuds coming from the same direction as the screams, the situation felt a lot more like someone was being heard in the background. Eventually, most commenters arrived at the same unsettling conclusion. Whatever the OP recorded was most likely a domestic violence situation happening
Oh, wait,
somewhere
was this case
inside
not
or around that
discovered,
shack,
like, not
which
figured
is
out?
exactly what made the police response feel so
Am I
disturbing.
tripping or not?
According to the OP, the dispatcher could hear the screaming during the call, and yet no officer came by that night. Even when he followed up the next morning,
Maybe
the
it's not the
property
right
still
one.
wasn't
Maybe it's not
checked, and
the
the only clear instruction he received was
clip
not to
then.
trespass or he'd be cited. Unsurprisingly, this didn't sit right with the commenters. A lot of them began speculating that the police may have already known more about the property or the people living there than they were letting on. 100%, because they know who it was, and it was a coworker slash family member slash friend. This is why they didn't respond
Corruption,
immediately.
maybe?
Which, at the time, seemed like the most disturbing theory. And with the OP now explicitly warned by police not to investigate the property himself, the thread slowly went quiet for several weeks. Until September 7th, when he came back with an update. I guess they finally had a reason to go out and check the property I was trying to tell them to look at. There are sheriff's cars all over the place, and cops in gloves walking in and out of this garage, and one cop throwing up in the front yard.
Oh,
The update
shit,
heavily
yeah.
implied that something horrific had finally been discovered at the property after all, but it still didn't explain exactly what had happened. And without another follow-up, the thread once again fell back into uncertainty. Unfortunately, 5 months later, that uncertainty ended in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
On February 7th,
Here we go. Never mind, this is a
2022,
great
OP
one.
finally returned to the subreddit with a follow-up post. I posted last year about coming home and hearing a female voice screaming for her
Oh
life.
my God,
I
yeah,
posted a
yeah,
video
yeah.
with the audio of the scream and got plenty of comments. About 2 months later, the house it was coming from had sheriff's cars all around it. I found out that an elderly man had taken his life via gunshot and that his son was the only person home and the person who reported that his father had taken his life. Fast forward to last week, I was sitting at home watching YouTube when I heard gunshots. I live in the country and that's common, so I didn't think anything of it. Turns out it was the sound of that son murdering his mother.
Yeah,
he
that's
was
what it
trying to claim
was.
self-defense, but he's being charged with murder. I live next door and my security cameras caught the audio of the murder. It also captures the vehicle the son made his getaway in. I've had detectives in and out gathering video footage for the past week.
Damn.
His son
so his,
was 40-year-old
yeah.
Tim Johnson II. According
Yes,
to
I have
reports,
heard this.
on
Yeah,
the night
this
of
is a
January
great one.
29th, 2022,
Yeah, it was
Tim
so
contacted
fucked.
the Claremont County Sheriff's Office and told them that his mother, 61-year-old Stephanie Cheney, had taken her life. But when Highland County deputies arrived, the evidence at the scene didn't support that story. There were multiple bullet holes in the front of the house that appeared to have been fired from inside, with shell casings near Stephanie's body and a loaded firearm magazine sitting next to the coffee table in the living room. So, when investigators questioned Tim under pressure, he confessed to murdering his mother, claiming he did it because he felt threatened by her for always carrying a pistol in her purse. Tim was
Yo,
arrested
bro.
and later sentenced to 15 years to life.
They could have
But
like
knowing all
solved
of
it.
this now places the
earlier
original Reddit post in a
if they
much
listened to
darker
the dude,
light.
bro.
The woman screaming, "You're hurting me, you're killing me," that night in July 2021 was almost certainly Stephanie Cheney. And the man whose voice the OP couldn't quite make out was most likely her own son. Which
Yeah.
means that recording may have captured only a small piece of a much larger and troubling pattern of violence inside that home. One that would eventually
Look
leave
at that,
both
bro.
parents dead
Exactly.
within
What?
6 months of
Look
each
at
other.
that.
And when you factor in that Tim later tried to
Insane
stage
that
his
the cops
mother's
didn't
murder
do
as
shit, bro.
self-inflicted, it becomes harder to ignore the possibility surrounding his father's death months earlier, which had also been ruled as self-inflicted at the time. Even OP himself pointed this out in his follow-up update. This is a family annihilator. They are now looking at him for the murder of his father as well.
That-
But
yeah,
the
I'm
most
pretty sure
tragic
that-
part
that
is
ended up
how
being correct.
preventable all of this looks in hindsight. If local police had
Or I guess
taken
not, I don't
OP's
know.
reports seriously and responded properly, lives may have been saved.
Hey, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly, bro.
On May 25th, 2021, this image was posted by Anxious Phase 4140 in the subreddit Morbid Reality. The image shows a
Oh, wait,
woman
this looks
crouched beneath the
familiar.
roof edge, pressing herself as far into the corner as she can with a phone held to her ear. And just behind
that
her,
maybe, like,
climbing
her
over
ex
the
or
other
something?
side of the roof, is a man. The title of the post explained the context. This terrifying photo reveals the moment a woman climbed onto her roof to hide from home intruder, only for him to appear behind her. The
Holy
reactions in the
fuck.
comments were exactly what you'd expect. But the more people looked at the image, the more unsettling the situation became.
Yeah, that looks creepy as
Because
fuck.
burglars usually avoid confrontation. If someone inside the house notices them and starts running, the logical move is to take the opportunity to escape before police arrive. Yet, this man made a conscious decision to follow her, something one of the
Oh
top
my
comments on the
God,
Reddit
yeah.
thread pointed to. If someone breaking into your house is this determined, they're not just there for your possessions. And that suspicion
creepy
only
as
got worse
fuck.
when several users zoomed in on the man's right hand,
like a
where he
knife or
appeared to be
something.
holding something that looked like a knife.
Yeah.
The image wasn't clear enough to confirm what it was. But when people eventually tracked down the full story behind the photo, the details turned out to be just as disturbing as everyone feared.
Alright, here we go.
The
We're
incident
about to learn the lore.
happened in September of 2014 in Venice, Los Angeles, and the woman in the image was identified as actress Melora Rivera. Melora had been
shit,
home
what?
alone and asleep when the break-in started. According to
not
reports,
locking
she
doors
woke
and
up
shit?
after the intruder shattered part of her front door and reached through
Okay,
the
never
opening to
mind.
unlock it from the inside.
Okay, never mind. Now
Once I saw him in the house, I knew that we both couldn't be there. I knew that I didn't want to have a confrontation with him of any sort, you know, not knowing what his intention was.
The moment she
Yeah,
realized
smart.
someone was inside the house, Melora grabbed their phone and climbed out of the second-story window, hiding herself beneath the edge of the roof to call 911.
Good.
But while she was still on the phone with the dispatcher, the intruder followed her out through the same window.
Oh my
At that point,
fuck.
Melora was trapped. The drop from the roof was over 20 feet, which was far too high to jump without
fuck.
risking serious injury. So her only option was to stay completely still and hope that the intruder wouldn't come around to her side before the police arrived. Fortunately, officers arrived within 2 minutes and were eventually able to talk the man into surrendering on the roof, while firefighters brought Melora down safely using a ladder.
Oh,
The
that's
intruder was
only like 20 feet,
identified
though.
as
Ain't gonna
29-year-old
lie.
Christian Hicks, and the people who knew the neighborhood immediately recognized him as a homeless man who was often seen in the area. When investigators pulled his
Yo.
record, it became clear that this wasn't his first violent encounter with the law. He had 2 prior convictions. One in 2008 for carrying a loaded, unregistered handgun, and
Yo,
another
how
in
is he getting
2011
this
for
shit, bro?
inflicting injury on a spouse or partner. But even with that history, it still didn't answer why he had chosen Melora's house
Yeah, who
specifically.
knows?
There was nothing suggesting he had any personal connection to her before that morning. The only clue for why he
Just
ended up at
unlucky
her
then,
house came from
unfortunate.
what happened earlier that morning. According to
what?
reports, Christian had already been detained that same morning after a neighbor saw him wandering through someone else's yard around 7:30 a.m. Witnesses
Okay.
later said they had seen him acting erratically in the neighborhood even before Melora's encounter. But when the police detained him, the caller refused to identify him in person, and officers were legally forced to release him. Looking at both
What?
incidents side by side, several reports described Christian as mentally ill and behaving unpredictably in the hours leading up to the break-in, which means that Melora was likely never the actual target. By
This
the
is
time Christian
unfortunate
reached
then.
her house, he was already drifting through the neighborhood in a paranoid and unstable state without any clear destination or reason. Melora may have simply been the unlucky person
Yeah,
whose home he entered
exactly.
once that spiral reached its worst point. And once he got inside, whatever state he was in pushed him to keep following her even after she climbed onto the roof trying to escape. Fortunately though, she made it off that roof unharmed.
Good.
But it's
Good,
hard
bro.
not to imagine how much
She
worse that
probably
morning could have
moved
become
out of that house
if
for
police
sure,
hadn't
bro. I would
arrived
not
in
say that
time.
either, bro. Fuck that. Yo, that was a great video, bro. W fucking video.